Hey, what's up you guys, it's Connor, and today I'm going to be doing a book review for The Three-Body Problem by Cixin Liu, translated by Ken Liu. I asked on Twitter earlier today if you guys prefer me to do individual book reviews for books and series, or if you prefer to just have one at the very end. And so far, most of you have said individual book reviews for each book. And I also think that with this series, I'm going to have to do individual reviews because there's so much to talk about for each one. So usually with my book reviews, I do my pros, and then my cons, and then my rating. That's how I'm going to do it with this one. This is the first book in a hard science fiction trilogy, meaning that there's a lot of science in there. I actually suggest that you do not read the synopsis for the book. I feel like it gives away way too much about the plot, and I think that this book is a lot more fun when you go into it more blind and you just kind of try to figure out. So listen to my synopsis and then decide if you want to read it based off that. At the beginning of this book, it's set in the 1960s, and it follows a girl as she is witnessing her father being beaten to death in a cultural revolution happening in China. And then after that happens, there's a couple of time jumps. The first one is to when that girl is a little bit older, and then it time jumps again to the majority of the story, where it follows a guy named Wang Biao. Oh, names. I'm really bad at pronouncing Chinese names, so I'm really sorry about that. But one interesting thing is that in China, the given name is pronounced last and the surname is pronounced first. So his name is actually Liu Cixin in China. So, fun fact. Anyway, it follows Wang as he discovers that there has been a string of suicides with intellectual people within China, and the police have decided to get him involved to try to figure out why these intellectuals, these science people, these heads of research are committing suicide. They figure out it has something to do with this game called the Three-Body Problem that people have been playing, and so Wang has to go into the game and try to figure out what the heck is going on. There's some weird stuff that is happening, some stuff that people cannot explain, and so it's up to him and some other people around him to try to figure out what is happening. That's the general basics, and I feel like you shouldn't know more than that when you're going into it, because this blurb literally gives away the entire plot. So actually, I'm going to do my cons first and then do my pros. Cons. In this book, there are a lot of info dumps, and the info dumps are all of the science bits, so this book can get really bogged down in the science, which is fine. I mean, it's hard science fiction, so that's to be expected, but it's like a lot of dumping. Like, it's not just that the diction that they're using is very scientific and that they're describing things in scientific ways. It's that they'll info dump use a bunch of science words and then explain exactly what all of it is, and so it'll be like a whole page of just explaining what something in science is. And because of those info dumps, it's very slow moving. I think it took me a couple of weeks to read this book, which is fine because that usually takes me a little bit longer to read adult fiction. But if you're going into this novel, you might want to know that it is very slow moving, and I prefer to have more fast moving plots. But I didn't really mind too much that it was slow moving, just be aware that it is slow moving. And again, my last con is that the synopsis covers the entire plot of the book. It's almost as if you could just read the synopsis and go on to the second book in the series. The only thing you wouldn't know would be who the characters are. Even then, there's not a huge amount of character development, so you just would miss out on some character names, but a lot of them doesn't even matter. Now onto my pros. This is super interesting. I found all of the science so cool, and I really liked the concept of this game and how there was something weird going on with it and they were trying to figure it out. And I really liked that mystery aspect of the characters not knowing what the heck was happening and them trying to figure it out before time runs out. And so there was some suspense there, and I really enjoyed having that. It made me want to read this book faster. Another pro for me is all of the Chinese elements. I don't know too much about China. I've read a few books. I've read some old Chinese, like ancient Chinese stuff, but I haven't read very much about modern China or modern Chinese ideals or anything like that. I don't know too much about modern Chinese culture, and seeing some of those historical elements of more modern China was very interesting to me, and I really liked learning about all of those and seeing these revolutions and how these people acted and how there was a lot of danger from just anyone and everyone around you, so you had to be really careful. And so just learning a little bit more about another culture was actually fantastic. I really liked this. And I actually read this for Diversathon because it's written by a Chinese author and it was translated into English. That's also another one of my pros. I think that Ken Liu did an absolutely fantastic job translating this from Chinese to English. I read Ken Liu's translator note where he's talking about the process that it took to translate something from Chinese into English, where their cultures are completely different and their languages are completely different. And I think that Ken Liu did a really good job of taking those elements of Chinese culture and putting them into English, but not putting them in a way that would alienate English readers. I also found it interesting that he would take certain phrases in Chinese culture and sometimes he would translate them and then have a footnote, and he tried to keep those footnotes to a minimum so you weren't having to read footnotes all the time. But I'm actually glad that he kept some of those really important Chinese cultural aspects, and he also added some sentences within the text that were approved by the author for when something was mentioned, and if you didn't think that the reader in English would know what it was, then he added just a little brief description so that you just could keep reading and read through the book. So I really liked the translation. I think he did a fantastic job. And my last pro of this book is going to be that I really liked the main character. I said before that I didn't feel like there was so much character development. I felt like a lot of the characters were just kind of there. There's a couple, 2 or 3, that actually had some character development, and the main character was one of those, and I really enjoyed being in his head and seeing his confusion and trying to learn with him and seeing him go through the steps of figuring out the 3-body problem and what is going on and what is happening behind the scenes. I thought that his opinions and his thoughts and the way that he went about doing it was very realistic, and I really appreciated his character. One thing that was kind of weird though was that he has a family, Wang does, and then when he starts trying to investigate all this stuff, his family, like, he's never mentioned his family again, so I was a little bit weirded out by that, but everything else, really enjoyed it. So overall, I had a really good time reading this book. I ended up giving it 4 stars. There were some things that I had some trouble with, reading it really slowly, the info dumps, but there were a lot of things that I absolutely loved. All the science fiction elements, the 3-body problem game, the character, the cultural references. I loved all of those, and so I ended up giving this book 4 stars. Definitely recommend this first book. I have not continued along with the series yet, so I will be doing individual reviews as I go through the series, but definitely check this series out. The 3rd book just came out recently. So that's going to be my review on the 3-body problem by Liu Cixin. If you liked it, please give it a big thumbs up and comment down below if you really like hard science fiction. Have you been meaning to get more into it? Do you have any recommendations for me in the science fiction genre? Because I haven't read too much science fiction. I'm trying to get a little bit more into it, but if you have any recommendations, I'd love to hear them. And I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.